few weeks ago, I realized that there are no tutorials, or there aren't enough tutorials that talks about some major concepts in TypeScript, especially utility types that we tend to use or we tend to see probably in open source code, or if you write some very good TypeScript, I'm sure you've come across them. Examples of those codes are things like partials, omit, pick, right? Now, if you've ever contributed to open source code or you've ever written a library, I'm sure you will have used one of this, any of these three. But today I'm going to be talking about partials in TypeScript. Now, basically, what are partials? Partials in TypeScript are, as the name implies, it is used for handling types, right? So let me give an example just to make it clear. So you must have come across this situation whereby you have an interface of this nature. So let's say you have an interface of user, and then let me just do this. And here you have your email as a string. You have your phone number as a string also. You have the ID, the string, the UID. Then you have the name as a string, and then you have the raw name as a string, right? Now, if you have a form, this is an interface for a user, but that simply means that you could also have a form that requires these details, but without the ID, right? And without you updating the email. That's a possibility. So two things you might be willing to update might be for the phone number and the name, or the raw name. So let me give an instance. So say you have something like this. Let me try to draw this out. Say this is a form, right? Let me call this the login. And within this form, you have another input field. Call this the raw name. Okay, let me call this your name, right? The raw name is just going to be the actual name. Then this name here is going to be more like a cleaned version of the raw name, right? Now let me remove all of this from here that we have here. Let me just drag it down here. Okay, so let me add this to it, and then move this, and then move this and this, and move this down here. So basically this is what you have, right? Okay, let me just do this, move this up here a bit, and move this to the right a bit, and move this here a bit. So let's say you have this form, and then you have this, and then you have this. Let me duplicate this, and then you have this as well. But in this case, this becomes your phone number, right? Because you can change those two things. So let's say you have update user. Let's say this is a form, and you also want to use the same interface for this user that you have here, right? This same interface here is what you want to use to update this guy. So you could definitely have a function like this that says update user, like this, and this function does this. So what does it do? It basically takes in a user object. So let's say updates. Let me just call it updates, and the update is going to be a user. But because we know that all of these are required, right? You can see that there's no optional parameter here. There's no question mark to say it's optional. So all of these are important details that the user requires. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make use of partials. I'm going to do something like this, partial. I'm going to do this. So it simply means that if I want to update now, I can, let's say, undo update logic here. So if I want to try that, what I can do basically is just say I can have this update user. I can call this inside my code and have something like email, name equals to cleaned name. Just as if there's a cleaned name parameter somewhere, I can just bring this down here and have this.
It's 1 hour.
raw name is assigned to this name here, right? And then I call it name or raw name. Let me just leave it as raw name. And then we have the phone number as phone number also. So now this is valid, right? This is valid and this is also valid. If I don't update any of this is also valid. Why? Because I'm using partials. And this is also valid. As you can see, all of these are valid. Why? Simply because I'm using partials. So basically what partials allow you to do is to undo updates, most especially. There are times you try to consume an API, and once you consume an API, you don't need the entire details to also send back in terms of like the interface or the type you've defined, which in this case is this user. Of course, there'll be more things here, right? But now you can see that when you want to update, you can update just some of the data and not all of them. But partials allow you to be able to do that. When you use a library most times and then you are defining, let's say you have a library defined that calls or send transaction. Let's say there's a library like this with a function that says new client, for instance, dot send transaction. And inside this transaction, there are very multiple options. You can have options like description, right? Which are like something you have to pass in. This might be required, right? Or not required. And then you may have other things like let's say memo, something, whatever to add to it. Now you could have only description without the memo. And basically that means the send transaction makes use of the partials in this case. So that's basically how it works. So when you talk about partials, you are simply talking about an utility type in TypeScript. So let me just point that out. So partials is an utility type in TypeScript that allows you to define partial properties from a shape. Shape in this case refers to this interface that we have here. So this is the user shape. So that's basically what it is. So when we talk about partials, this is what we refer to as partials, which is basically just this. The ability to be able to define a type, to have a shape, and to be able to pick part of that shape to use in multiple places without triggering a type error. So that's basically what partials is. So the next time you see partials, you know that this is how it works. This is what it does, right? And so yeah, thank you for listening to this. Thank you for watching this. I hope you've learned something from this, and hope to see you next time. Bye for now.